line, it's racist, it's wrong, and it's pervasive. Even as research shows that racially diverse juries spend more time deliberating, make fewer errors, and can result in fairer trials. One of the arguments in the Ninth Circuit appeal, brought by former LA City Councilman Mark Ridley Thomas, is about violation of that Batson doctrine. In its case against MRT, the U.S. Attorney's Office struck black women from the jury pool based on demeanor and employment status, a clear violation of the law. A long list of high-profile black law professors, historians, and justice centers have now filed amicus briefs in support of MRT's position. But the irony of a black elected official who for more than 3 decades represented the best interests of his black constituents having black women voters struck from his jury pool is repugnant and morally wrong. So much for being judged by a jury of your peers. MRT's legal team argues correctly in its filing that given well-established law and legal principles set forth by the Supreme Court, Ninth Circuit, and state courts and legislatures, the Ninth Circuit should likewise reaffirm and clearly state that applying facially neutral justifications in discriminatory ways to target black women and other protected groups presumptively violates Batson. I couldn't agree more. For KBLA Talk 1580, I'm Tavis Smiley. We welcome your comments.
Live from historic Leimert Park in Los Angeles, California, I'm Tavis Smiley, and I'm so glad to see you and me back in stride again. Before we get started with today's show, let me invite you to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at The Real Tavis Smiley and get updates on X, that's formerly Twitter, at Tavis Smiley. By the way, should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, you can always visit theTavisSmileyShow.com or wherever you get your podcast and listen to the Tavis Smiley podcast at your leisure. Another great show on tap for you today. In our second hour, it will no doubt be a sparring session today when former black Republican candidate for president Larry Elder, who has a new book out and a new podcast aimed at what he calls saving the nation, we will go toe-to-toe with Larry Elder when he joins us face-to-face in hour 2. Get your popcorn ready. In our third hour, we will talk with Brooklyn rapper Kimba about his new documentary, As We Speak, which exposes the racism behind criminalizing rap lyrics. But in this first hour, 2 more conversations. Tomorrow is Super Tuesday. 16 states have primary elections or caucuses, including, of course, California. And so on the B side of this hour, a dialogue with African-American Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who on tomorrow is attempting to do what Kamala Harris once did, win a California U.S. Senate seat as a black woman. But we will commence today's show in a moment with U.S. Representative Katie Porter, who's also vying for that same U.S. Senate seat once held by the late Dianne Feinstein. It is a tough race featuring 3 major Democrats, Lee, Porter, and Congressman Adam Schiff, who led the House impeachment of then-President Donald Trump, and former Dodger great Steve Garvey, who is running as a Republican. We will speak with Katie Porter and then Barbara Lee coming up. But first, this breaking news. The U.S. Supreme Court has ruled unanimously for Donald Trump in his ballot eligibility case. He will be on the ballot in all 50 states this fall. We will talk more about this developing story in our second hour with Larry Elder, who endorsed Donald Trump when he dropped out of the race for the White House. It is shaping up to be a very busy news week around here. This Thursday, President Biden will deliver his State of the Union address, and the House has a Friday deadline to avert another government shutdown. Lord help us all, going to be a busy news week. And speaking of Joe Biden, yesterday the New York Times and Siena College released yet another poll indicating that a majority, hear me now, a majority of President Biden's 2020 voters now say he is too old to be effective. The concerns about his age cuts across generations, gender, race, and education. And so I have a sobering question I want to ask before we start today's show. A sobering question I've been marinating on for some time now. Maybe you've been noodling on it as well. But first, let me just play a little snippet of a song from the Blind Boys of Alabama. Take a listen.
Nobody's fault but mine. Nobody's fault but mine. If I die and my soul be lost, ain't nobody's fault but mine. Well, it's nobody's fault but mine. Nobody's fault but mine.
The Blind Boys of Alabama. Let me start by saying I do not believe President Joe Biden has been given the credit he deserves for what he has accomplished against some pretty strong headwinds. Respect or no respect, I also do not believe that at this point President Biden has any interest or intent to step down. To be clear, I am not now, nor have I heretofore suggested, that he should stand down. That decision, is the purview of the president and his party. But here's my simple question, given the existential threat that we now face in Donald Trump, knowing he'll be on the ballot in all 50 states. If this Biden-Trump rematch is a fight that nobody wants to see, if a majority of President Biden's 2020 voters now think that he is too old to be effective, if Vice President Kamala Harris is viewed less favorably than President Biden, if over 100,000 voters in a critical primary state like Michigan, which he barely won in 2020, recently voted uncommitted, even as Vice President Harris yesterday finally called for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, and if young voters are still losing faith and feeling disaffected, if the president's black numbers are soft at best, and a sizable number of black men, rightly or wrongly, are considering options other than President Biden, if independent candidates, including Cornel West, RFK Jr., Jill Stein, and others, are gaining ballot access right now in states all across the country, and if every poll, survey, and study finds the same data, the same concerns about his age and his ability to lead the country effectively, which would seem to indicate a trend, not just a real-time snapshot, not just a media narrative, here is my question. If come November, after all the warning signs hidden in plain sight, President Biden loses this election to Donald Trump, whose fault is it? Who we gonna blame?
Nobody's fault but mine. If I die and my soul be lost, ain't nobody's fault but mine.
From Leimert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam, from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Politics has become so messy lately, it's hard to find a reason to be hopeful. Hi, my name is Shakira. I'd like to tell you why Adam Schiff gives me hope. My parents raised me to take my right to vote seriously, so I try to stay on top of what's going on. I saw Adam Schiff lead the impeachment and insurrection hearings. He seemed like someone I could believe in. Then I actually met him at the MLK parade in South Central LA this year. Adam listened. He cared. I got to see who he is. He understands the struggle we have with the cost of living, all the parents working extra shifts and taking second jobs to get by. He gets a threat to our democracy and our freedoms. Adam Schiff knows how tough things really are for a lot of us, and I believe he's going to do something about it. It gives me hope, but hope isn't enough. We need to vote for Adam Schiff for Senate.
I'm Adam Schiff, and I approve this message.
Paid for by Schiff for Senate.
So you just used bug spray in your home. Now what? Well, between the waiting and waiting for things to dry up and keeping your family away from the mess, it hits you. You could have used Zevo. Unlike other bug sprays that stick around, Zevo goes from kill to clean in seconds. Plus, it's safe for use around people and pets when used as directed. Zevo, people-friendly, bug-deadly.
Eggs are a staple in our diets, and there's only one egg with more delicious farm-fresh taste plus superior nutrition. Eggland's Best. With more vitamins, including 6 times more vitamin D and 10 times more vitamin E, plus 25% less saturated fat than ordinary eggs. Available in so many delicious varieties. Classic, cage-free, and organic. Eggland's Best. Better taste, better nutrition, better eggs.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
All right, let's get this show started. It's going to be a rich and full show today, and I'm delighted to commence today's program with Katie Porter, Congresswoman Katie Porter, running for the Senate seat that was once held by the late Dianne Feinstein. Congresswoman, good to have you on. How are you today?
Just fine. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my great delight to have you. Today is Monday. Tomorrow is Tuesday. It's been circled on your calendar for many, many months now. I start by asking, how are you feeling the day before?
I'm feeling good. I really want to see strong turnout in this next day or two because turnout has been low so far, and so I'm really glad that you're reminding everyone to vote.
Mm-hmm. What does that low turnout mean as you see it specifically for the Porter campaign?
Well, look, we are really proud to have the strong support of voters in their 20s, 30s, and 40s, people who believe that we need to push Washington harder to deliver for Californians and to have strong support among Black and Brown Americans for whom Washington has failed to deliver. And so the biggest challenges that working Californians face, things like housing costs and child care costs, are things that Washington has not tackled. So I want to make sure that everyone's voice is heard in this democracy. This is a campaign about change. And so I think low turnout is a sign of more of the same. And more of the same has too often meant our communities of color getting left behind.
Tell me more, Congresswoman Porter, about the ways in which you think that Washington has specifically failed black voters.
Yes, so we have seen time and time again too many politicians who run their campaign for big corporations. I am the only Democratic official in this race who has never taken corporate PAC money. And that's a big contrast. Just since I've been in politics, when I ran and won in 2018, in that same period, Representative Schiff, my Democratic colleague, who I have great respect for, has taken corporate donations from 357 corporations. That's a big contrast. I want to make Californians to have confidence that I am fighting for them. And what this means is the agenda in Washington is too often shaped by what's good for corporate America rather than the issues that really matter to Californians. Child care is such a great example of this. President Biden pushed Congress to enact a plan to reduce the cost of child care and raise the wages of the amazing people who are caregivers. And where did that plan go? It died in the U.S. Senate. because things that mattered to corporations got prioritized over things that mattered to families, like child care costs.
I've got about 10 minutes left with you, and I want to make the most of it. Let me run through some issues right quick that I want to get your take on. Let me start with this, though. It occurred to me last night. Obviously, I discuss these issues every day on this nationally syndicated program that's, of course, based here in Los Angeles. But last night, something hit me in a way that, frankly, it had not hit me prior to in all these months of talking about this. You're in this race for the Senate, as I mentioned. Your colleagues, Barbara Lee out of Oakland, is in this race, and Adam Schiff, who you mentioned a moment ago, is in this race. That's three of y'all. I thought last night about all the seniority, all the power in Washington that you, Barbara Lee, and Adam Schiff wield. All three of you are running for this seat, which means under California law, you cannot also run for your House seat. So California, it hit me last night, is about to lose three major players in Washington. Schiff will not be in the House anymore, win or lose. Barbara Lee will not be in the House anymore, win or lose. Katie Porter will not be in the House anymore, win or lose. I'm thinking about Congress having a deadline this Friday, having to avert yet another government shutdown, all the other issues that we could talk about in this hour. But that's a big risk for each of you individually, say nothing of the state of California, to lose all three of y'all at the same time. That just hit me last night. You have any thoughts about that?
Well, I have no doubt that my colleagues, like Congresswoman Lee, will continue to make a difference, whether it's in the Senate or in other ways in public life. Before I ran for Congress, I was a consumer protection advocate, and my research was the research on the front page of the New York Times that showed how big banks were cheating families during the foreclosure crisis. And then I went to work for then Attorney General, now our Vice President Kamala Harris, helping families all over the state save their homes. And that was incredibly rewarding work. So I know that I'm going to return to my consumer advocacy, whether I'm doing that in the Senate or whether I'm doing that in another career. And I would say I would absolutely expect people who are change makers like Barbara Lee are never going to stop being powerful voices for our country.
Tell me why.
And so I'm excited to see where we all go.
Yeah. Tell me why Katie Porter, since I'm talking to Katie Porter, tell me why Katie Porter took that risk.
Yeah, I mean, the Senate, look, and I ran for the House. We really shook up the House. There were a bunch of us who ran as first-time candidates like me in 2018 in the wake of Donald Trump, and we did Congress differently. That's certainly true about me. Not taking corporate PAC money, one of the small group of candidates who didn't do that and showed that you can win the most expensive, most tough races in the country, like mine in Orange County, without being beholden to corporate America. I also don't take lobbyist money. There's only 11 members of Congress who don't take lobbyist money. So I have really shown that we can invest in our democracy. We don't just have to talk about it. We can actually act to strengthen it. And so I also think I've shown that oversight matters. Think about going toe-to-toe back in the early days of the pandemic when I went toe-to-toe with the director of the CDC and got him to make COVID testing free for every single American, regardless of insurance, regardless of immigration status. And I think that was a real wake-up call to my colleagues that you can use hearings to actually deliver help to Americans. Yes, legislation matters, but so do those hearings. And I think we've seen people in Congress really pick up those hearings and that 5 minutes of questioning and try to use them to show Americans that we're on the job and to actually get them help.
You've raised money a few times. Let me follow you, Councilman Porter, and talk about money. I think it is noble on your part. I think it speaks to your integrity on a certain level that you have turned down repeatedly. PAC money and lobby money, I celebrate you for that. And yet, as you and I both know, and the voters of California know, and for that matter, people across the country watching this major race in the biggest and bluest state know, Adam Schiff has raised $32 million plus in this race. Let me ask you point blank before I go forward, what difference money has made in this race?
The big influence of money in this race has been from a handful of billionaires who have spent millions, over $15 million, to run negative hit ads on me. That is the outside spending. That is the super PAC spending. And it's literally 5 or 6 billionaires who are distorting our democracy in this race. We have raised the resources to be able to be up on TV, to be up on radio, engaging every kind of community, digital, Latino, rural, Black radio, everywhere we need to be, we are. But that outside money, which is really, it's a handful of people, and they are scared of me. They don't want me in Washington because I'm the candidate in this race who's willing to talk about things like wealth inequality and the income gap, who's willing to question whether CEOs are paying workers enough to live on. And the result of that has been that flood of shady dark money into this election. And Californians should understand they have the ability to make the choice about who is their next senator. And by voting, they are sending a message that their election, that our democracy cannot be bought.
I consider Adam Schiff a personal friend, and yet I can say this because we are friends, that I do not see him or think of him as a progressive. I do think of you as a progressive. I certainly think of Barbara Lee as a progressive, and I wonder whether or not this race and other races across the country say anything about the state of progressivism in this country. To your earlier point, they're scared of you. Are you just too progressive to represent California in the U.S. Senate?
We need to be focusing on the future. And for me, that's what it means to be a progressive, believing that tomorrow can be better, that we can address things like structural inequality, like racism that is holding back, the educational inequities that are leaving too many Black and brown kids behind. So I think what we're seeing in this moment is, Adam Schiff, who's really focusing on fear of Trump. What will happen if Trump gets into office? We should all be scared of that. But we need to have an affirmative vision about what we as Democrats can do to help people. And so I think I have shown in my 5 years in Congress that you can actually be someone who thinks about the future, who inspires people for tomorrow. Look, our democracy and trust in our democracy was low long before Donald Trump came along. And like everything that man touches, he made it worse. But the confidence that people need to have that politicians are working for them and not corporate America is a problem that existed before Donald Trump, and it's a problem that's going to exist long after we don't have to deal with that man. So I think what I have to offer here is a real vision for how the Democratic Party can rebuild itself and build itself as a brand that people can trust, that is more than just no Trump, but it's actually, here's a better life for you and for your kids and your grandkids. That's what I'm running on, and that's a message of change.
You mentioned Trump. Let me ask you a couple quick questions about that. Just announced at the top of this program, breaking news, the Supreme Court has ruled, not to my surprise, I predicted this, as did others, given what I saw from them in oral arguments, but they have ruled that he can, in fact, be on the ballot in all 50 states this fall. Your thoughts?
Well, so obviously I disagree with that. I think this Constitution is clear on this point. But look, we have seen over and over again, this is a corrupt court. This is a court that is not a court that is upholding the law and precedent. This is a court that has an agenda. And so sadly, I think this will deepen people's concerns that they cannot trust the Supreme Court. I think this is why it's really important that we elect people who are willing to do things differently, who are willing to abolish the filibuster, who will push judges harder. This shows the stakes in this election, I think, this decision.
The other thing about Trump I want to raise is your comment about the way that Schiff has campaigned in this race in California for the Senate, advancing an entire campaign strategy on this fear of Trump, as you put it. I think you're right about that. I couldn't argue that. And yet, I've been reading a number of pieces, including a piece in Politico that came out yesterday about your campaign. And what they and others have argued is that whether it was the money or the fact that Adam Schiff led those impeachment hearings and knew exactly how he wanted to campaign for this seat, there are those who've suggested that you've been too often on the defensive and not on the offensive in this race. You care to comment on that?
Well, look, I'm not a Washington insider. I've only been there 5 years. And so there is a status quo. There is an establishment that we know that. And so I think, look, Representative Schiff had a safe seat. When we lost control of Congress last election, he was sitting on $20 million. And I was winning a seat. I was helping us try to fight to keep the majority. For Democrats, we didn't win enough seats. We didn't win any seats in California last cycle. And I think if we're going to change that, we need to have someone who will really inspire Democrats and independent voters and even persuadable Republicans to come out and to turn out. And I have shown an ability to do that on the ground in Orange County. But there's no doubt this is a complicated race. There are several candidates in it. Steve Garvey has a lot of name ID as a former celebrity baseball player. And Adam Schiff has spent more than half of his campaign spending has been to lift up a Republican, Steve Garvey. And evidence suggested that he's gone so far as to lift Steve Garvey into first place in this Senate race where things stand now. And what are we seeing as a result? Really high Republican turnout compared to Democratic turnout. We can't have this going into November. That's why it's so important to have two Democrats on the ballot so that we can do all of that work of reminding and inspiring people to vote.
Do you find that Schiff strategy shameful and disgraceful? What words would you use to describe it or define it?
It's definitely cynical. I mean, it's a strategy that says that winning at all costs for the candidate is more important than our larger democracy. It's an odd position for somebody who has called on people to never advertise on Fox News to then be spending out of his own campaign to advertise on Fox News. I think that's the kind of inconsistency and hypocrisy that makes people question whether Washington can really change, whether we can really reshape our democracy.
Finally here, with all due respect to Adam Schiff and Steve Garvey, I'm just asking you point blank, is what the Senate needs, does the U.S. Senate need another white male?
Well, look, obviously they are well represented and have been since the founding of this country. What we need is a Congress that has the experiences that the American people have. I am the only single mother of school-age children in the entire Congress, and there are 10 million people who are parenting alone in this country. And so everything from our tax policy that's biased against single parents with regard to the child tax credit, to this nonsense BS that we hear about traditional families and judging people who, like me, are raising their children alone and doing a darn fine job of it. I think it matters to have diverse life experiences. My kids are in public school in California. Yeah. I understand what is at stake in making sure they're able to have jobs and be able to afford to live right here in our community.
It's a tough race, and the whole nation is watching. She's vying to be the next senator from the state of California, taking over the seat once held by Dianne Feinstein. She is a member of Congress. Her name is Katie Porter, and I delight in having had her on this program. Congresswoman, all the best tomorrow. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Good to have you on. When we come forward, Barbara Lee on Tavis Smiley. Stay with us.
Unapologetically progressive. Unapologetically black. You're tapped into Tavis Smiley.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful they saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former President Trump will remain on the presidential primary ballot in Colorado. The state Supreme Court earlier ruled to remove Trump from the ballot, claiming he was an insurrectionist when he incited the January 6th U.S. Capitol riot. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled unanimously in the decision. In its decision, the court said the responsibility for enforcing Section 3 of the 14th Amendment against federal office holders and candidates rests with Congress, not the states. Vice President Kamala Harris will meet with Israeli War Cabinet member Benny Gantz at the White House a day after she called for an immediate ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war in the Gaza Strip. A White House official says Harris will reiterate that civilian casualties must be reduced. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
The link between Los Angeles and 6 Southern California counties. MetroLink is your transportation link between the people and places you care about. Whichever link you're making, MetroLink will be your in-between. Visit MetroLinkTrains.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Clippers won a tough game at Minnesota on Sunday against the number 2 team in the Western Conference. The Clippers held on for a 1-point win in a game where neither team scored more than 90, and James Harden was 0 for 10 from the floor. Kawhi Leonard sank 2 free throws with 13 seconds left to seal it. Kawhi finished with a game-high 32. The Clippers are at Milwaukee tonight. The Lakers are back in action tonight at home against Oklahoma City. A follow-up to LeBron reaching 40,000 regular season points on Saturday. The closest active player to LeBron is Kevin Durant. In 17 seasons, Durant has scored 28,372 points. If Durant maintains his 27.7 average, and that's a big if, he would need to play at least 5 more years to reach 40,000. What LeBron has done might not be duplicated, at least not anytime soon. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
We're not just a thermometer recording and broadcasting popular opinion. We aim to be a thermostat, transforming the conversation about climate justice in our community. This is KBLA Talk 1580.
Jim was at the laundromat when he heard his ear said Maraca, senor, but his nose said, hey, freshest scent ever. Following his nose, Jim found a man pouring Gain scent beads into the washer. The scent, the freshness. Jim blurted, sir, your scent maracas smell amazing. You could call them scent maracas, but most noses call them Gain scent beads. Try Gain scent beads. Way fresher than detergent alone.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
The link between Los Angeles and 6 Southern California counties. MetroLink is your transportation link between the people and places you care about. Whichever link you're making, MetroLink will be your in-between. Visit MetroLinkTrains.com.
People who come to cricket stay with cricket, just like our customer Jaron.
I'm the singer and guitarist in a band, and I use my cricket phone for everything. It's basically like another band member.
Don't miss a single beat. Switch today and get a free Samsung Galaxy A14 5G. Smile, you're on Cricket.
Real customer paid for testimonial. Must bring your number to Cricket on up to a $60 a month voice plan depending on device. Select models only while supplies last. First month service charge and tax due at sale. Cricket 5G requires a compatible device and is not available everywhere. Fees, terms, and restrictions apply. See store for details.
I spray and scrub, but the soap scum in my bathtub is still there.
I spray and scrub, but the burnt sauce on my stovetop sticks around.
Sprays can leave grime behind, but new Mr. Clean Ultra Foamy Magic Eraser combines the scrubbing power of an eraser with the cleaning power of Dawn to melt away tough messes on contact.
Just wet, squeeze, and erase.
Stop spraying, start erasing, and clean with more magic than ever with new Ultra Foamy Magic Eraser.
Mr. Clean, Mr. Clean.
Sounds different, huh? This is Tavis Smiley.
It's Tavis Smiley indeed, and I am delighted now to be joined by U.S. Representative Barbara Lee out of Oakland, who I've known for decades, it seems, and she is vying tomorrow for the U.S. Senate seat, once held by Dianne Feinstein. She's attempting to do what Kamala Harris once did, which is to be elected to a U.S. Senate seat from California as a black woman. Congresswoman Lee, it's the day before. How are you feeling right about now?
I'm feeling great, and how are you doing? Really glad to be with you, Tavis.
It's good to be on. Good to hear you. Good to be on with you, and good to hear your voice. It's been too long. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. When you say you're feeling great, unpack that for me. It's a big day in your life tomorrow. So tell me more about how you're processing the next 24 hours.
Sure. You know, part of this campaign has been about putting together this multiracial, multi-generational, progressive coalition. And all weekend I was in San Diego, in Orange County, and of course in Irvine, in San Bernardino, Riverside, Los Angeles today. Of course, going to my school, San Fernando High, where I was the first black cheerleader. And everywhere we go, I'm going there. Tavis, I had to make them change that selection process into an election, and that was my first election at 15.
I love it.
So
I love it.
being around people, I was with Barron last night at his place in Los Angeles, and so we have a people power campaign. We may not have all the money that my opponents have, but let me tell you, I'm feeling so good because young people, Gen Z for Change, all these young Democratic clubs, 6 out of the 8 constitutional officers have endorsed me. We have many African-American Democratic clubs, Latino community, Dolores Huerta. I mean, when you look at who's out there working, pushing people to the polls, I'm very excited about it. We just have to get people to the polls because turnout still is a bit low.
Yeah. We are obviously based in L.A., as you well know, but this program is syndicated across the country, so people are listening to you everywhere right about now. And I know that they are curious, as I am, as to hear more from you about what it has meant and what the process has been like for you running for the United States Senate as a black woman. I ask that in part because the nation knows that LaFonza Butler is basically a seat warmer at the moment. So Gavin Newsom did appoint a black woman to warm that seat until this election could be held. And I got questions about that. I'll put a pin in that for the moment. But just tell me more about what it's been like for you as a black woman campaigning up and down this state.
Well, let me say a couple of things. First of all, the glass half empty is money.
Mm-hmm.
As a black woman in California, we 40 million people. We have a very expensive state, and establishment money doesn't go to a black woman progressive candidate.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've got to get to public financing of campaigns, get the dark money out of campaigns, and overturn Citizens United. So that's the first glaring kind of issue that's the glass half empty. But we've been able, and Tavis, over the years, I've raised so much money for other Democratic candidates. I've raised it, it's gone right out to elect women, black women,
Yep.
people of color, to expand our Democratic and hold our Democratic majority. But I have people who have contributed to me, like recurring, I used to say tithing, but it's recurring donations every month, $10 a month, $20 a month.
Yeah.
And so it's been remarkable to see how people have come around who don't have a lot of money, but you still need a lot of money in California.
Yeah.
And so what we have done, I have the endorsement of Our Revolution, which was the campaign that, Bernie Sanders won California primary by 10 points. He did beat President Biden in California.
Yep.
So Our Revolution endorsed me, and they're helping to power this people-powered campaign and getting people to the polls. Working Families Party, Gen Z for Change. We have Reproductive Freedom for All. Some major organizations are phone banking, chasing ballots, doing the targeting, and getting people to the polls. So that's been really great. We've made $15 out of $1.
Yeah.
Secondly, it really shows you, my campaign as a black woman in California, how the establishment works and how power works and how, when you look at white privilege, how that works because, the media, of course, certain media outlets driven by money endorses my opponents, and then they start doing the polling, which none of our voters get to weigh in on because the polls are very targeted. And so then people start thinking, the polls are saying she doesn't have a chance. What do we do? But yet President Obama reminded us that we got to get to the polls. Get to the vote. That's the only poll that really matters.
Mm-hmm.
And so, part of being a black woman, it's same as running for the Senate in California, same as, being a black woman on any other issue. It's like you have barriers, you have challenges.
Yeah.
But Dr. Maya Angelou says, and still we rise. So we have to do it our own way. And it's exposed how, though, the media, the establishment media, and the money work together.
Yeah.
Okay, and then how the polling works with the money, works with the establishment, white establishment, and how the wealth gap in our community is such that we don't have a large donor base. But I tell you, so many people have come around, Gavis. It's been just remarkable, the kind of people who've endorsed me and who have supported my campaign financially. And we're doing really well in terms of the phone banking and in terms of our voters getting out.
Let me just say this, and I'm not saying this to brown nose. You and I have been friends and known each other for years, so I don't need to do that with you. And I've said it publicly anyway, so it's not the first time I've said it. But Gavin Newsom had not once but 2 opportunities, if he had chosen to do so, to have appointed you, a black woman, to this U.S. Senate seat. When Kamala Harris won the election with Joe Biden and became vice president, here she is, a black woman who had won this seat. And there were many people calling for him to replace her with a black woman. He went the other direction. And I have nothing against the person that he appointed, but he did not appoint another black woman named Barbara Lee, who he could have appointed to that seat then when Kamala becomes vice president. When Dianne Feinstein passes, he picks a black woman named LaFonza Butler to warm the seat, but he could have picked Barbara Lee in that instance. He did not. I don't speak for Gavin Newsom. He has his reasons for why he did what he did both times, but there are people in this country and in this state still smarting about the fact that when he had 2 occasions to do something, he did not. How have you processed that all these months?
Well, Tavis, I know how establishment politics works, and I know what power means, and I know how difficult it is for black people and black women especially to break through that. And I know how difficult it is for people to understand the power dynamics that take place in politics in a state such as California. And so processing it is one thing because, again, we have to figure out ways to break through. And I was determined that I was going to run if in fact, that he decided not to appoint someone who could win this race and appoint myself. And then it was early on myself and Karen Bass, and we agreed, Karen Bass, that whoever he appointed, we'd support the other. And he did not. And, of course, he made his own decision. And so I think this is an example, and I hope people who are listening to this understand how power works and how white privilege works and how it works in the politics in a state like California, where the stakes are high. A person like a Barbara Lee is going to represent those who haven't been seen, who's going to push the envelope and make sure everyone has a seat at the table, who's going to look at reparations and make that a priority, who's going to look at comprehensive immigration reform and be effective. I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, in an immigrant community. I know how to bring black and brown people together to deal with all the issues. Dolores Huerta has endorsed me, for example. I'm the most experienced in foreign policy and international relations and national security. A university in Virginia designated me as the most effective Democrat in foreign policy. And so, you have somebody such as Barbara Lee who's effective in foreign policy, maybe not the establishment points of view, but is effective and has delivered for California. I was the one that went to President Bush, even though I was against his wars, and voted the only one against the authorization to use force. I worked with him to deliver resources through global AIDS initiatives, and I've helped save 25 million lives in Africa.
There's no question about that. I was going to go there. That was a historic vote that still resonates all these years later, not authorizing him to invade Iraq, as we know. When we come forward in our remaining moments with U.S. Congresswoman Barbara Lee running for the U.S. Senate seat out of California, I want to ask her, she's kind of teed this up. I just want to ask her if she thinks she is too progressive for the U.S. Senate, number one. And there are a few other things I want to get to while I've got her on the line. I'm Tavis Smiley. She's Barbara Lee, and we're glad you're tuned into this conversation.
This is getting good. Yeah, man. Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward.
What is dedication?
My biggest fear in the middle of my addiction was that my kids wouldn't have a father. And I started thinking, you know what? This isn't my story. I definitely had to become a better man to be a better father. It's important to me that my kids are empowered and truly believe that if they can think it, they can do it.
That's dedication. Visit fatherhood.gov to hear more. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Joey from Vermont, a farmer trying to get through the winter. Adriana from South Carolina, a single mother living paycheck to paycheck. Liam from Ohio, an injured father struggling to provide for his family. Hi, I'm Shanola Hampton, and I support the Feeding America network of food banks because they help provide over 6 billion meals to people in need each year. Learn more at feedingamerica.org.
Do you support public education? More than 38,000 educators at United Teachers Los Angeles do too. Together, we have fought for a better public education for our students and communities, and having you on our side has been essential in our fight for better public schools. Together, we will continue to work for public schools with green spaces, more mental health staff, smaller class sizes at every grade level, and a higher investment in the Black Student Achievement Plan. We are UTLA, and you make us stronger.
On your period, sudden gushes happen without warning. But now, you can say goodbye to stand-up gush fears. Thanks to Always Ultra Thins with rapid dry technology. It absorbs gushes 2 times faster than the leading store brand and gives you up to 100% leak-free protection. Hello, clean and comfortable with Always Fear No Gush.
At Charmin, we heard you shouldn't talk about going to the bathroom in public, so we decided to sing about it.
When you're rolling Charmin Ultra Soft on the potty, less is more, so roll it back, everybody. Charmin's irresistibly soft and hella nice. The grip is always soft. It's our party wine. She's cushioning things so our cheeks feel fine. So everybody wanna touch the sky.
Charmin Ultra Soft is irresistibly soft and more absorbent, so you can use less. Enjoy the go with Charmin.
Jeff, I'm standing courtside where this team is about to celebrate a staggering win here in the fourth quarter. I just spoke with the team captain, who told me they owe it all to Kohl's, where fans found the license gear, game day hosting fines, and other essentials they needed to rally this team to victory. He said, quote, "Great brands, great prices. Discover it all at Kohl's and Kohl's.com. Back to you."
Ready to re-examine your assumptions and expand your inventory of ideas? More of Tavis Smiley coming your way right now.
We were just talking, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, about the fact that you stood up courageously as the only member to vote against giving George Bush authorization to invade Iraq. I am reminded that Adam Schiff, who I regard as a friend, but Adam Schiff did vote to invade Iraq, which I think makes him incompatible with most California voters who overwhelmingly think that that invasion was a bad idea and in many ways made the world less safe. That as the backdrop, I still want to ask whether or not, while you are beloved and iconic in Oakland and for that matter around the country, I wonder whether or not you think you're too progressive for the U.S. Senate.
Travis, let me just ask you this. First of all, I don't know if people know, but my voting record, Adam Schiff and Katie Porter's, 94%, it's the same. Mm-hmm. Secondly, what does it mean being too progressive? I led the effort to ensure that Black and Brown communities did not have to die from COVID. Thousands of people a day were dying, right? Mm-hmm. And I led the effort, had to fight against Democrats to deliver resources to Black and Brown communities, to hire trusted messengers, to do the vaccines. That was Barbara Lee who did that. Mm-hmm. Is that too progressive? Is it too progressive to fight for formerly incarcerated individuals by trying to remove the barrier to Pell Grants, to Section 8, to SNAP benefits? I've been leading on that. Is it too progressive to really lead on the climate emergency in Black and Brown communities? I've been working on the Green New Deal and working on making sure that climate justice is part of our climate policies. I don't know if that's too progressive or not. Is it too progressive to call for a ceasefire when 30,000 people have died? And I was the first candidate in this race who said, no, Israel deserves security and condemned the Hamas attack, have called for the hostages to be released, but have called for a permanent ceasefire so that we can have and get to a diplomatic and political settlement where Israelis and Palestinians can live side by side. Is that too progressive? Is it too progressive as a person who's formerly on food stamps and Medi-Cal and didn't have money for child care? I had to bring my children to class. Is it too progressive to fight for child care investments and to lead on poverty issues? You know, I work with Bishop Barber in the Poor People's Campaign. Mm-hmm. I want to grow the middle class. So is it too progressive to code our leadership and say, let's talk, just use the P word, poverty, and finally got a task force on poverty and opportunity established to lead on the child tax credit and all the issues to lift people out of poverty? I don't understand what too progressive would mean, other than maybe people look at me and say she's a black woman. But the issues that I champion have been issues, Tavis, that have lifted everyone. And look at reproductive freedom, the Dobbs decision. I came out and talked about the abortion I had, and I never talked about it before. But I wanted people to understand I really believe in a woman's right to make decisions about her own body. And I had to make that hard decision when I was 15 years old. I never talked about it because it was my own business. But I did so that other black women especially could understand they had a voice and someone who sees them. Is that too progressive?
Sometimes I'm laughing because sometimes in your role as a talk show host, you ask questions that are a bit rhetorical. I've known Barbara Lee for years, and I knew she'd take the bait. She did. I digress. Our remaining moments with Barbara Lee running for the U.S. Senate in California when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
My daughter was diagnosed with a rare malignant rhabdoid tumor on the spine. They sent her straight to St. Jude. My hope was gone. But when you get there, everyone's like, hey, we're not going to give up. And when you see other people not giving up on your child, that makes all the difference in the world. When I found out I didn't have to pay, I was just grateful. They saved my baby's life.
Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA reminds you that when we fight, we win, and we don't black down. LA Community Action Network, or LA CAN, was formed in 1999 when 25 residents of downtown LA came together and acknowledged the problems that existed in their community and made a commitment to do something about those problems, to stand together, organize, and become a force in the community that demands change. Civil rights and preventing the criminalization of poverty are their core projects. In addition, they take on women's rights, the human right to housing, and healthy food access. LA CAN also has projects focused on economic development, civic participation, voter engagement, and community media. While downtown LA remains their home base, with a particular emphasis on the Skid Row community, in 2007 they expanded their housing and healthy food access work into South Central Los Angeles. LA CAN believes that power for low-income people and people of color is achieved through a large, active, and well-informed member base that utilizes a multitude of methods to advance their messages and goals. If you'd like to join the Los Angeles Community Action Network and organize people to fight back against oppression, please visit cangress.org. That's cangress.org. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
If you love to travel, Capital One has a rewards credit card that's perfect for you. With Venture X, earn unlimited double miles on everything you buy and turn everyday purchases into extraordinary trips. Plus, receive premium travel benefits like access to over 1,300 airport lounges where you just check in and chill out. Open up a world of possibilities with Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Lounge access is subject to change. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Who do you trust to get at the truth? Tavis Smiley. That's who. The conversation continues right now.
I've got 3 minutes left with Barbara Lee because I got to move on to my second hour and spar with Larry Elder for an hour. Heaven help us. And she's got to get back on the campaign trail. But I must tell you, Congresswoman Lee, and you'll be, I think, tickled to hear this. Our socials are blowing up. I'm getting all kind of responses that your last response, your last answer was on fire. And I must tell you, that is probably, not probably, it is. That is the best answer to any question I have asked of any candidate during this election cycle. You killed it on that answer. And I think people...
You want me to keep on?
No. If I had the time, I'd let you, because I know you got a long list. Let me close. But it was an amazing answer, and that one answer. This is when you know what you're doing, and you're speaking from the heart, and you're speaking truth to power and to the powerless. You know what you stand for. You know why you're in it. And somebody asks you a question like this, you just run. You run and you speak your truth, and the audience resonates with it, and they respond, and I love it. That said, let me close with this. I said this to Katie Porter in an earlier conversation, that I'm feeling some sort of way now because it occurred to me that you and Katie Porter and Adam Schiff, never mind the campaign tomorrow, are all going to be exiting the House. That's a whole lot of Democratic firepower to lose at one time, given the shenanigans and the way the GOP is acting a fool in the House.
Well, let me tell you, Tavis, let me focus on what I'm doing. And anyone in California, I'm going to take these last few minutes to please vote for Barbara Lee. I'm on the ballot twice, the special election and the primary, so you get a chance to vote for me twice. It's legal. And get out to vote efforts are mounting in a way that I'm very excited about, but it's still a little too low. So I want people to get to the polls to vote for Barbara Lee so I can be your voice and your representative in the United States Senate.
Nope, I received it.
And Tavis,
yes.
My website, BarbaraLeeForCA.com. So please go to my website, sign up to volunteer, sign up to do phone banks, and let's pull this off tomorrow, and let's get into the top two. Thank you again.
It is a historic race. Good to have you on. All the best tomorrow, Congresswoman. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Tavis. Nice being with you.
Likewise. Good to have you on. As I mentioned moments ago, you see how smooth that was? I asked that question. She just went right back to the campaign. I ain't mad at her. That's what you do the day before Election Day. You stay focused. And so her answer was her answer, and it is what it is. When we come forward, speaking of answers, I got a whole hour of questions. I'm going to step aside and put on my boxing gloves. You get your popcorn. Larry Elder is here. As you know, Larry Elder, well-known black Republican for many years, conservative talk show host. He has a new podcast. He's just commencing. He has a new book out. And he, when he got out of the race for president on the Republican side, he endorsed one Donald Trump. You probably heard the news earlier that the Supreme Court ruled today that Donald Trump can be on the ballot in all 50 states. So there's a great deal to talk about when we get to hour two, which will commence in a matter of moments with Larry Elder on Tavis Smiley.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Former President Trump will remain on the